Now when I started to film that video of the squirrel, I pressed the record button, but I must have pressed it twice or not pressed it the first time properly. When I pressed it to stop the video, it just started the video, so I got something else. And that video was just one squirrel, and I was talking about there's normally only one squirrel, but I haven't seen, there's 3 squirrels, but I haven't seen them together for a long time. I don't know whether they're still there or not. And so when I got back in here, I had a look at the video. I thought, oh my God, it's chopped off. What's going on? I better go and film that squirrel again. So I went back to film the squirrel, and as you saw, a second squirrel appeared at the same time. And so when you see 2 squirrels, you're meant to see 2 squirrels. When you see 2 squirrels, you're meant to squirrel something away, very important, okay? And so 2 squirrels is greater than 1 squirrel, and 1 squirrel means it's time to squirrel something away. Right? Normally there's something good coming to you that needs to be collected. And okay, that's my phone, so let's have a look what that says. Okay, so it says here, all that an individual man do is limited and depend on his or her karma, previous incarnations, his/her personal equal universal tasks and qualities. God's willing. Okay, so that's my lady, and that's food for thought of what we're going to do today, because today somehow we have to integrate everything in this room that you see, the music, the instruments, the cameras, everything, the videos, the books, the artwork, the philosophy, the boating, the motorcycle maintenance, everything that I do and have been collecting around me as part of what I'm doing here in Bromyard is to be integrated into this video. And I know this because of the signs in the universe. And I got 2 signs in the last 24 hours from 2 of you, 2 different viewers of the channel. And one of those signs was that somebody sent me a message to say, I came here for the Thinkpads. You said it twice. And this got me thinking about my channel and the Thinkpad, the fact that I have Thinkpads and boats and cameras and all this stuff. And I got an email message from somebody who said that they love my philosophy, my cameras, my computers, my Thinkpads, all this stuff that I do. Yeah. I thought, oh, that's interesting. I never got a message like that before. And so I'm getting this message, somehow I have to integrate everything together. And you know, you just got to squirrel stuff away sometimes, and every now and again I get the idea that I should go for a walk, yeah? And what happens is I stand up and I get a little message in the back of my brain that says, time to go out, yeah? That's what I do, I get up, I go out. So I put my other hat on. Where's my other hat? The one that I forgot to take off last time, put my other hat on because this was what I was wearing when I went to get a book that I got yesterday in between making videos. And I didn't know I was going for a book, I just went for a walk. And normally if I go for a walk in that hat, then I normally go shopping. And if I go shopping, I take my money in my bag, my shopping bag. I didn't do that yesterday, so I don't know why I was going out. Normally I don't go out for any for no purpose. I thought, well, maybe I am this time. So now I wandered down to town, hadn't been down to the bookshop, a place where there's books, free books, to help yourself. For a long time, as I approached this area of town, I thought, there's a book, must be a book. And so I wandered over to the book area there, and there weren't that many books. There was a few books. I went through, rustling through them. And first books I saw was an old workshop manual for a mini car and a Morris Minor car. Now, these are very special cars, Morris Minor and a mini car. And I took the Morris Minor car book, workshop manual, into my hand. And the other one, the mini one, I left there. And then I thought, well, I don't have a Morris Minor, and I'm not going to get one because they're too expensive. You have to pay about £5,000 or £6,000 for those things. And so whilst I'd like to own one, yeah, and look after it, because what I do is all the stuff I own is what I'm looking after for the good of the world, okay, and my own learning through the dog, because it'll just disappear otherwise. Somebody doesn't look after it. So the will of God is that somebody looks after this stuff. Somebody put in their mind, I want to get this old thing and look after it. Okay, that's what happens. That's how stuff gets looked after. Even old trains, very difficult to look after. Steam engines and stuff like that. Even they get looked after by groups of people who become interested in these things. And so the universe is perfect and it's happening automatically, and I'm hoping in this video to prove this to you completely and without doubt. Somehow we're going to learn this in the process of this video. This is probably the most important video I've ever made in my life. And I'm a bit frightened of making it because it's so ambitious, but I can see what God wishes us to do together in this moment, because there's a few of you out there, and I'm hoping that it will have some significant effect ultimately in the universe. This video. We're going where no adventurer has gone before. This is like Christopher Columbus' voyage. I'll show you the book. Okay. Right. This is the book I found after I put back the Morris Minor, because I said, no, I'm not going to own one of them, so I'll just leave it there for somebody else to take. And I found this book, and it was broken, but it's all there. And I sort of thought, don't really need that, do I? So I put it back, and then I went digging around the books. I went through all the books, and I thought there aren't any books here except that one. Yeah. So I went searching again for this one, and I picked it up to make sure that it was all there, because I didn't know it was all there at that point. So I thought, oh yeah, every bit's there. And then I opened the first page and had a look, and I read just a little bit of the introduction. Oh wow, this is great stuff. This guy is not he's not an engineer, so he's not like he's somebody who's become very interested in this topic, and it's not been part of his work or he's just been interested in this Victorian engineering, and he was even awarded a doctorate by one of the universities for his work, honorary doctorate for some of his work. And so he's like a creative amateur, if you like, which are the best scientists are the creative amateurs. I'm a creative amateur, yeah, that's what I am. Okay. So I got so far into this book, and it's opened up a whole new opportunity to look at the Victorian Age. And I have an album. I started to make an album, a music album called The New Victorian Age. And I only wrote a couple of songs for it, and kind of was a project that got put on the back burner, which one day, normally all my unfinished projects eventually get finished. Don't know what will happen to that. We'll see. So, whilst I was reading the book, I did some diagrams. And there's two of them really. The one is the diagram of growth over the last 200 years from the first metal iron object into the Memphis Grok of AI facility of Elon Musk's. That's one diagram covering the whole evolution of life in that process. And the other one is the evolution of the alienation of the individual through the same period to by the system, okay? The same process, looking at it from the point of view of the individual and the group. Okay. So I was able to, by drawing the diagrams, I was able to get an in-depth look at the overview of it, the exact number of years involved, the cycles involved. There seems to be 200 years, separate cycles of 100 years, and the whole thing is 200 years old. Yeah, 200 years. It's a special anniversary, if you like, right now, of the start of this Iron Age. Yeah. I'll take 5. Now, before the Iron Age began, the Iron Age is when man stopped building things out of wood and started to build them out of cast iron, and then wrought iron and then steel. The Iron Age started in 1803. 1803. It's interesting. Tom Mann, the great musical instrument supplier where I get all my guitars from cheap, just sent me a note to say my order for a bass guitar, right hand. I'm a left-handed player. I've got a left-handed bass guitar, but I haven't got a right-handed bass guitar. And my neighbour Steve, he hasn't got any instrument. He's never learnt an instrument, and so him and I want to start to play music together. And so I got him a bass guitar. He's a farmer and he doesn't get paid hardly anything, and he doesn't even, I found out that he doesn't even have gas on in his house. He's got no heating in the winter. The whole winter he has to spend without any heating in the house. Only an electric thing that makes a shower hot, but no water to wash the dishes in. You have to boil a kettle for that. Yeah, and no heating, just completely freezing cold. You have no idea how cold his house is up. And I've had the heater going just a few weeks ago, the middle of summer, and he's got mould growing there and all that. Oh, flipping heck. I can't. I wanted him to buy one originally. I thought, no, I've got a bit of spare cash this month. I'll just buy him a guitar. Yeah. And so that's a start, and that might be how the new Victorian Age record gets completed, because I remember stopping it because I needed a drummer and a bass player, and I went to some place to see if I could find one, somewhere to record it, and they wanted to charge me £2,000 for 1 day of bass player and drummer. I thought, are you insane or something? Just find me a couple of buskers, you know, somebody who fancies making a record, you know. There must be thousands of people who jump at the chance to make a record. Somebody wrote a record. But no. So that's what happened to the Victorian Age. I put it on the back burner. And it was like years and years and years ago. It was in Germany. It was probably 8 years ago that I stopped working on that. I haven't recorded anything since, really, apart from what I do on my videos, and I can't be bothered to get all the equipment set up, so I apologise for the quality of the sound. And normally I like to do a good job on the sound, but too many wires involved here, too difficult. That's one thing we're trying to eliminate, all the wires, yeah, all the wires, terrible stuff. It's all part of this video. Everything that's coming to my mind now is all part and parcel of what we have to understand. The problem of the world, we need to solve it. Today we need to solve the problem of the world. So when we leave this video, there's no problem in the world. That's the ambition God has for this video. Okay, might be a long one. I hope you're up for the long haul. I'm getting powered up with coffee now. We've got a way to go. Okay, now, in God's ultimate wisdom, God knew that we were going to lose nature, that nature was going to be completely lost and destroyed. Divine nature, the world as we knew it, in the 18th century, okay? It existed in the 18th century. Absolute perfect divine nature existed, okay? And we look back fondly on that time, yeah, before the Iron Age, before we made the steam engine, before the factories were built, when man lived in beautiful communities all together without travelling all over the place and disturbing the world. He just lived together with his brothers and sisters in his villages, and they got up and they made hay together, and there was no machines to thresh it, and they used to have a great time just doing it all together, yeah. And they lived together with the animals, but that was a problem. That was a problem. Okay. And so, which I'll come to in a minute. So everything was idyllic, everything was perfect. The technology was wood and stone, and they used to make some beautiful wooden stuff. Yeah, this is just bad stuff. I mean, it looks all right now compared to modern furniture. It's a bit older, not that old. But if you go back to, 200 years ago, the quality of the furniture they used to make, it was simple, it was beautiful, it was oak, it would last forever. You could hand a chair, if you made a chair, you could hand it down to your descendants. It would pass through. And they only had to make stuff as it wore out, or as they wanted to make something new, yeah? And so they didn't have to make that much stuff. It wasn't changing. The world wasn't changing. It was the same since the Franks. From the time of the Franks in 800 AD, the world was basically the same. It was a wood and stone technology, all right, with a little bit of blacksmithing involved. And they used to also have goldsmithing, and you work with the semi-precious metals and so on, to make things more ornate and stronger, hinges and that stuff. But a lot of stuff they made out of wood, yeah. Oak is very, very strong stuff. You can make all sorts of, you can use oak in place of steel. Surprising what you can do with this stuff. I made nails out of oak and nailed a whole floor to some joists using wooden pins. Worked perfectly. Because I had nothing else. Where were we? I need to take 5. Okay, so at the end of the 18th century, 1700 and something, God knew that all this stuff was going to get lost. And so a new art movement appeared in the universe, just appeared. All of a sudden all the artists wanted to paint English landscapes. Well, they paid Germans did it. There was a whole movement of painters who painted the landscape as it was at the time before it all got destroyed. They didn't know it was all going to get destroyed. But it was gone. It was gone within just a few short years thereafter. And so we have, for the record, the picture of the world as it was before the Victorian Age, before the age of the factory and the electrical telegraph pole and the steam engine and the bridges and the iron bridges and the iron horse and so on. I once wrote a poem called The Iron Horse. You would like it, but I don't have access to it at the moment. Because I've been over this ground a few times, trying to find a solution to the world problem. And I knew it was important, the horse, the fact that we lost the horse, and now we have to look after the iron horse. And the horse reproduced itself, didn't it? Yeah. And so the painters kept this era because there was no photography at this time, and also the colour. It was all done in colour, wasn't it? The beautiful paintings of the landscape of the English countryside, and the farm buildings and the haystacks and just the whole way of life of the peasants of England was painted in this time. Okay, so we have the record. We know what it was like. And we look back at it and say, wow, I wish I lived in that beautiful divine nature. What a great nature that was, unspoiled. Because everybody used to live right next to it, and you had to keep it clean and tidy and maintained, Because, there was your bit. Where you were living was all you owned it, It was your asset. It was a common land that everybody shared and all that. Before the Enclosures Act, which we'll talk about, the enclosures started in 1836. And then there were the 1830 agricultural riots that preceded it. As the people saw what was being done to the land, and how they were losing their work. Now, everything that happens to man comes from God, and it's part of his karma. And so, what was the karma that caused the people to lose the beautiful stone and wooden age and be forced into this iron age, this terrible iron age? What caused man, God, to force man into this? Because God put the thought into the industrialists to do what they did. God is responsible for evil and good. Evil and good. Everything comes under God. If you don't learn your lesson, you will be evil. God will make you evil. You can't make yourself evil. You just have to be evil if you're not learning your lessons. Okay. Now, one of the things that preceded this was the animals. The animals were enslaved. Although man was free, the animals were not free. And they used animals like they used machines. And they were using them to pump water out of the mines, because they're just, they're mining coal and stuff like that. The start of the bad stuff, mining. Mining is the origin of evil, really. You dig a big hole in the ground, Then what do you do with it? Well, it can be used. It's useful to mine certain things here, but not on a grand scale. Not on like, oh, let's just dig the whole earth up and and make a big tailings pit there and a mountain, a new mountain of rubbish over there, and let's move somewhere else when we're finished with it. It becomes uneconomical. Let's just leave our mess and go and mess up the Congo or something, you know. So this is evil to do this here. So man has to learn that too. So man was mining and pumping water out of the mine by using horses that were in special circular buildings, going round, 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 till they dropped, and standing in their own shit. Now that's not much fun for a horse, right? And so God said, no, 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 no. You're going to lose all this beautiful idyllic lifestyle. You're going to lose it because you're messing up with the animals. You're not treating them right. And back in those days, they used to shoot and kill everything. Every possible living creature. They used to, if they saw something like that squirrel, they'd shoot it and eat it. That's what they used to do. They used to eat peacocks and swans and everything. You have no idea. Blackbirds, 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie. So, the sins of man against the animals. And you'll see that the animals, since that time, they've been pensioned off. And the animals, some of the animals, live freer lives than we do. They have got their own fields that they can freely roam them, as long as they don't jump over the fences. And their lives are far better than they were when they were enslaved as machines to man. Okay, so what God says is, well, if you want to learn your lesson, you better become slaves yourself. Okay, we'll show you what it's like to be a horse. And so man was made to be a slave in the factories, and they lost their jobs. They were living in the beautiful countryside, and they took away all of the common land, then closed it all, built factories in different places. The people had to leave their homes, move to the place where the factories were, and they were slaves in factories, just like the horses were, you know, repeating themselves over and over and over again, right? Well, some bloke got rich. Let's take 5. We'll have a look at one of these diagrams, I think. I don't know if you can see that, but we've got this, on this side we've got the development of the world over 200 years, and here we've got the development of the community over 200 years, of the individual. Okay. Now, we'll start on this one, because this is simpler, and it's a bit more of an overview. Okay, so this is us, and this is them, us and them, us and them. Ultimately the Mossad and the CIA, the individual, the alienation of the individual by the system. Okay, and so the individual was living in communities, as we talked about, and what happened is that we transitioned from the wood stone age into the iron age, and at the same time this started in 1803 with the first iron plough. Okay, the first iron plough, and rapidly developed from the iron plough to, by 1845, we had portable steam engines. right? Portable steam engines, which came out of the development of the steam locomotive, and which also came out of the stationary steam engine. And so at the same time as all this was happening, we had the Enclosures Acts. There were three acts passed 1836 1845, which took away the land that was the assets of the people and basically made the people penniless and dependent upon the rich people who owned the land and the assets, okay? Before that time, the poor people were able to live off their own land and live off the common land and, you know, grow their vegetables, survive, build their own houses using the common forests. And there was no need to have money because you could just go to the forest and get a few sticks. Whereas, you know, now you've got to go to Mitre 10 or whatever it is, and you need money to buy anything that you want to use. And building materials are very, very expensive, and tools and so on and so forth. And so nowadays it's out of the question to really, for the poor people to build anything. First of all, they have no land to build it on, and then they can't afford the stuff to build with anyway. And so all that was taken away as they moved into the Iron Age and by the Enclosures Acts, okay? At the same time as this was happening, there was first of all, there's the 1830 agricultural riots, which is a point in history, and then we'll see that there was, the railways were built, and the railways allowed stuff to operate from a distance. They allowed goods to come in and raw materials to be taken out, and factories to be located in various different places, okay? And what this Enclosures Act did was it freed up all of the people to become slaves to, first of all, the navvy gangs that built the railways, and the factory workers that occupied the factories, okay? Slaves they were. Now, if we come over, that's the first 100 years, if you like. It only took 100 years, 3 generations, to go from living in the beautiful, idyllic community to be just one cog in a factory in a place you weren't even born in, that you had to travel to and move to and didn't know anybody else. They weren't your brothers and sisters. They were just some other people who did the same thing from all over the place. You can see how the community was destroyed in this process. And the land was freed up for big agriculture to take it over with the machines that they used, that started off with the plough and then evolved into portable steam engines in 1845, then allowed, they were turned into self-propelled machines and ultimately into the tractors and the combine harvesters and stuff like that that they used to mechanize the land. Yeah? Let's go over to this section here. You'll see we've got the first 100 years is here and the next 100 years is here. We'll do the first 100 years, okay? And so we've got 200 years of growth from 1824 to 2024, okay? Now, the first canals were built 1761 was the first canal was built, the Bridgewater Canal. And before that time, I'm going to take 5. I'm going to talk about this. Yeah, I'm going to talk about this over a cup of coffee. Okay. Because this brings up a subject that's very interesting, and that's the sail. Okay. Because what I forgot to tell you was when the landscape painters painted their beautiful pictures of England, what they also painted were seascapes and riverscapes, and they were the most beautiful things you've ever seen in your life. The landscape with the sailing boats everything just moving up the rivers, because you don't need roads, okay? In nature, the river serves to transport the materials coming in and stuff going out. It all goes down the river. And the canals were built really as part of the factory process. It was to get the coal from the mines to where the factories were, where the water was, before they developed machines based on the steam engine. The only power they had, apart from horsepower, was water power. Water power was a great idea, yeah. And so water power used to bring a community of workers together. They'd all go to this place where the water was, and they'd work together, you know. So it was more like craftsmen working together rather than a factory, yeah. But it was the kind of start, I suppose, of the idea of the factory, yeah. Because if you owned a mill, then, you know, you could control it, couldn't you? If you owned it. If it wasn't a communal built object, property. So we have the movement from the idea of communal ownership to private property, okay? And the start of the enslavement of man through private ownership of the means of production, yeah? I think Marx talks about this a lot. I don't believe his solution to it is viable, but it was an idea of his time, and he was a very wise man, Karl Marx and Engels, of course. And his writings are worth studying. I've read them, but briefly, along with everything else. I haven't sort of thought, this is great, this is the answer. I just read it and said, oh yeah, there's some interesting stuff in here. Okay, and so the sail was what powered the vessels, yeah, and it was something that's free, really. Apart from, you have to be able to make sails, yeah. Sails are labour-intensive kind of thing to make, yeah. You can make them out of wool, I suppose, and of course they use cotton eventually. Well, they must have got that from India. I don't know where. How they? Oh, maybe they used leather for sails before that. I don't know. Must have been a way. Or flax. Whatever they had in England, I'm not an expert on this, but yeah, there'll be an answer to this. There'll be some natural thing that they could use. But it would have been labour intensive to make the sails. In the same way as it's labour intensive to make an engine. It's a different kind of labour, right? Different kind of labour. Now, whenever technology is used, God makes man like doing it. People like working in technology. People like working with wood. People like working with stone. People like working with metal. The people who made this stuff, they loved making it, yeah. They had certain levels of perfection that they desired to achieve. And probably the greatest one here, I'll get the greatest one here out. This is actually the Russian, it's a German, all the machinery that made the camera was made in Germany. It's just after the war, they took all the machinery to Russia, and now they make them, they don't make them anymore, but they used to make them until quite recently in Russia. And this is one of the finest cameras ever designed, ever developed, and it was developed by the East Germans who developed this camera. and the fine optics. It's never been bettered, never been bettered. And it's the reason I keep these objects is because to remind ourselves where we're coming from and the kind of ideas that we had about making things originally, okay? When we thought that things were going to be the same forever, we made things to last. I learned a few things in this book, and that is that a steel ship doesn't last very long, but an iron ship can last 70 years because it doesn't rust as fast as steel does. I did not know that. And so the life of metal ships has gone down over a period of time. Now a ship lasts, I suppose, I'm guessing about 20 years now, a steel ship. And the wooden boats, they used to last over 100 years. I know that because I've had boats that are over 100 years old, wooden boats, that are still for sale. I've seen them, so just normal boats. So they must last at least that long, 100 years, if they're looked after. And the other thing with the wooden boats were that every piece could be replaced, and so the boat could last forever. They could take a piece out and put another piece in, and every piece of the boat. And they didn't have to, their life didn't need to end if you maintained them. Unlike metal, which eventually rusts. Now, man may develop technologies which do last forever, and could, with his science and technology, he could find ways that things could last longer than what they do. And I think this is what he's going to come to in the end. He's going to come to realise that he needs to do this. But he will only come to this point when all the technologies have been developed that he needs, and his process of evolution has been completed, because he's not doing this for nothing. He's doing this because he needs to learn some lessons, some very, very serious lessons about his own virtue. And once man understands what his mistakes were and what he's here to learn, once he understands that, then he's already learnt it. He's starting to learn it. And once he learns it, he then teaches it to his children. And quite quickly the age can turn around. So between 800 AD and 1800 AD, that's 1,000 years. That was 1,000 years of golden age, if you like. That was the golden age of man. The man thought it wasn't a golden age, yet he lived in very, very beautiful surroundings, and he built the greatest architectural works, most beautiful buildings that man's ever made, came out of that period. And everything else, everything since then has been generally of a lower quality. Okay. Now, the steel, the iron and the steel age, and glass and so on, we're in the age of plastic now, but we had the age of glass and steel, and these objects here were the pinnacle, if you like, scientific instruments. These were the pinnacle of achievement in metal and glass and so on, of their age. And what happened was let's talk about it. Let's talk about the cameras for a bit, because there was a problem with the cameras too, like there was a problem with the horses. Things don't change for no reason. Yeah, things change because God wants a better solution. God wants a better solution. So the cameras were fine, and it was great to have this quality and everything. They were lovely to hold in the hand. Yet they required chemicals that pollute the rivers, and they required working in the dark, and they required caustic substances on one's hands. And so after so many years of messing around in dark rooms, man got a little bit sick of this kind of dark place to do his artwork in. He used to be a painter, yeah, he used to just paint the stuff. And he was in the beautiful light, there was his subject, here was his object, and he was working in the light, yeah. And so what happened was I need a computer. I need a computer. I'll get mine. Okay, that little beep is undocking the computer. And so I have my computer on the docking station, so it's now plugged into all its hard disk drives and everything, which I better watch out for because I'm working on those hard disk drives at the moment. I hope it doesn't disturb it too much. But yeah, God gave man the computer. And we didn't know it when the computer was first invented. It was a huge, big machine, took up a whole building. Eventually it would become this, okay? And this is the absolute epitome of perfection of the computer. There's no greater computer ever built than this, in the same way as the cameras are great. Because after this, it was kind of all downhill, yeah? Because man is fallen into, he's not building the quality. He sees that, oh, we're having to make these computers over and over again, always different. Oh, let's cut the price down. That's, you know, they only last for a few years, and then it's another one. This is what he gets into this mindset, yeah. At this point, he was building something to last. It was expensive too, yeah. These computers were, I think they were about £1,500, maybe £2,000, some of them new. It's a lot of money. The only reason us poor people can afford to have them now is because the rich people bought them. And when they tired of them, we were able to buy them for £50 on eBay. And so we look after this technology on behalf of the rich, because otherwise they'd all be in the garbage heap, wouldn't they? They'd be gone. And we wouldn't even know what a Thinkpad looked like from 2007. Yeah. Okay, so in the 1990s, late 1990s, early 2000s, they developed the digital camera. And it started off, the digital camera started off as something which took a picture but wasn't a replacement for this kind of camera here. Yeah, it wasn't trying to be, and even its packaging was plastic, and it was, you know, because the technology is changing every year. There's another camera. I'll just put this back because it needs to be connected to its hard disk drive. I don't think anything will happen to it, but you never know. I have moved it around like that before. Yeah. And so there came a point in the history of photography where they produced a single camera that could take the place of this camera, the photojournalist's tool of choice. At the time I had a Leica M1, but this is its equivalent, a Contax. So, and it wasn't cheap. It also cost over £1,000 at the time. And this is that camera, the first camera that was generally available to the public. And I sold these, I had a computer shop that I offered these for sale, but nobody bought them because there was only me who was interested in this stuff at the time. It was so new, and you had to have a decent computer to be able to deal with it and all the rest of it. And so, but this was the first camera where you could point and shoot and get a whole pile of pictures, and they, where is it? Oh, that's not it there. And they, how does it come out? And they had this big card, look, 32 megabytes. That was a big one. I've got some up there with 16, 4 megabyte ones. 32 megabyte card in there. And yeah, you could take 30 or 40 shots or something, store them on a card, download them to your computer, and they were as good, they're an 8x10 photograph, they were really good quality. And this camera was something special about this particular camera. It's so beautiful quality, the software was special in it. And it was Kodak. Kodak was a great company, and I think the lens was Schneider built the lenses, I think. And it was very, very sharp and a very tiny lens, and breaking you a tiny little screen on the back, but all very workable and very good, very easy to use. And so after I got this camera, I had other cameras before it, but I was still using the film camera. But when I got this camera, that was the end of film for me. I never took any more film at that because I could do what I needed to do on this. Now, this changed photography because all of a sudden, when you had this camera here, you could only take a certain number of shots. You had to be careful. You couldn't see what you were getting before you got it. And it required a certain skill and more of a mastery to be able to get a good result. Yet, with the digital camera, you could take as many shots as you liked, just over and over and over and over. And so you could learn your art of composing and light, and you could learn it all much faster because you could get instant response, see where your mistakes were, adjust it, get a perfect result. And so I spent probably 10 or 15 years of my life taking thousands and thousands, 20 years probably, thousands of pictures, digital photographs. And eventually I stopped using, and I always had, this is an old camera from the same era. These were like, I think these were £3,000. And got a big hunk of glass, yeah. And if I want to take a studio photograph of something on a tripod or whatever, I will use one of these cameras. But for my ordinary, what I used to use this for, photojournalism, nowadays, this is all I use. It's all I use. It used to be not good enough for me. And it's not really good enough. But it'll do for the purpose that I'm not as critical as I used to be. I'm not as critical because I'm not using, I've taken so many thousands and thousands of photographs. I see that a photograph is nothing. There's so many thousands of photographs you could take. And so I don't really value the actual individual photographs anymore in the same way as I used to value them as works of art. Yeah, I still treat them as, every time I take a picture, I treat it as a work of art. Yet I'm not as precocious or precious about the result anymore. I use it as a tool, to document things and to pass information on to my lady, how her roses are doing and things like that. I use it as a tool, okay, more than as an art form, even though I exercise my art form whilst using it. I don't require to use specifically go out and take one of these other cameras and take photographs anymore. I don't do that anymore. And that's something that's only changed in me recently, in the last year. Before that, I used to, every year I used to do, use a traditional digital camera. I think the last time I did was a year ago. If I have a special purpose to do, I'll use a proper camera, yeah. I'll never use this for exhibition type of work. But for my own day-to-day photojournalism, if you like, it's good enough for me. I'll take 5. I just watched that back and I'm just thinking, why am I talking about all this stuff? And I think the key takeaway is that I'm not so much concerned with my own personal art anymore. And if I use my art, I do it to help other people. So the last thing I did with proper cameras was to document a metal smith master worker in Germany, to document his entire collection and his smithy and his family and himself as an important historical document, if you like, before it all disappears. And so that was really done for him. And the videos I do now have really taken the place of the still photography I used to do. I now generally do videos, more videos. And my artwork is I do to supplement the video work. I used to do still photographs of my artwork, and that's changed now to be video work. And so the whole world is moving from still photography to video photography. And what we're doing is we're getting back to the word. The word is what people speak. And I think I've pioneered this in that all my videos are simply me talking the word, if you like, and they're unpremeditated and they're going back to the way people like me used to put forward their philosophical thought to the world. They used to do it one-on-one, yeah, not through writing. And the writings became corrupted. We saw how the writings could be copied from one generation next, and things could be added and things could be taken away, and the writings of the masses got perverted over the course of time. And so we're back to the beginning now, where we can use video and the whole world can see us at the same time, and not only the whole world at this time, the whole world for eternity can see us. And this is a very great step forward for man, because no longer can, by AI of course, no longer should we have to have the second hand view of the teachings of the masters, because now we should be able to get it first hand. And we see that with Krishnamurti, because Krishnamurti, you can watch his videos first hand and see him talking, and it's a wonderful way of accessing the teachings. It's something that when I was experienced Krishnamurti, those videos were not available. You only had the books. When I found out about Krishnamurti's teachings, we had to read the books. But now on the internet, you can actually go and hear him speak, which is wonderful. Right, I'm going to take 5 and I'm going to come back to the diagram. Okay. Alright, now just to get back to this side, you'll see that after the factories were built, they were all connected together using electricity. This allowed the factories to be anywhere, basically. And from the electricity pole idea came the communications idea, and ultimately we end up with Grok, which is another kind of level of industrialization, because we're kind of going back to the beginning again, because Grok is not powered. Grok requires so much electricity that it has to have diesel turbines running. This is a big mistake. Diesel turbines to generate electricity to run Grok. And so we've come back to the mistake that we had in the beginning, okay? We've got the factory run by machines that were based on coal or oil or whatever, and it's not good enough. We can't go back to doing this. Yeah, this is just it's overdevelopment. So somehow we have to learn our lesson from what we've already done and say, this is too far, we need to stop this, okay? And the only thing that's going to stop this is a personal revolution, okay? Is to understand that everything that I'm showing you here is to understand it all, to understand that our technology can't destroy nature. It can't pollute the air to get something done. We need to find a technology that doesn't pollute. That is really what we're talking about. I think this is self-explanatory, all of this stuff. This is what happened to the world, yeah. First there was the first iron boat, 1787, the first iron boat. And then in 1819, the Rob Roy, the first ocean-going iron ship, okay. And then in 1820, the Menai Bridge, the first iron bridge, joining the Anglesey to the mainland in Wales. And then we've got the enclosures of 1840, and the manpower, that freed up the manpower to build the iron bridges and to build the railways, yeah, to build the ships. And the other thing that developed at that time was the Cornish pumping engines that were used to pump the sewerage in London, so that London could grow and grow and grow bigger than it could possibly be healthy for it. Yeah. Then we had, and the centralisation that came back with that, and then that was the first 100 years, and then in 1925 the first dual carriageway was built in London, the first dual carriageway. So out of that came the motorways and the concrete jungle. Yeah. In 1945, the London airport was built, and then the skies became filled with aeroplanes. Yeah, look how few years this is. Then we've got the airport terminus. What a terrible place that is now. Used to be a nice place. It's much, much worse now, with security cameras and everything. And then in the 1920s, the electric power pole madness, just different companies stringing different power poles all over the place, yeah. And this eventually evolved from 1920 to 1980, 60 years, into the Thinkpad, you know, the personal computer, which then, by adding many personal computers together, we got the data center from 2000 to 2010, the World Wide Web, first the internet, then the World Wide Web. And now, just 10 or 15 years later, we've now got the AI Memphis 2 Grok nutcase, yeah? And I have to say that this Elon Musk fellow is a nutcase. He's completely mad. He doesn't know it, but there's hope. Okay, I'm going to talk on the camera now. There's hope for the world. Now, I told you that it's a personal revolution, and we're all involved in this personal revolution. Because it's now the time for this, and it's coming to everybody. Everybody can see what's going on, and everybody has to change. You can't change for somebody else. You have to change to benefit yourself. And as everybody changes, so the world will change. And it's not unreasonable to think that Elon Musk might somehow come across these kind of teachings that I'm putting out here now. And also that other people like Jeffrey Sachs, George Galloway, many people in the world are adding their bit to what we're all saying, which is, and there needs to be a personal revolution. You can't change the world. Krishnamurti understood this. You can't. Everybody has to change personally, yeah? And if somebody needs to be evil, they need to be evil. And a greater evil will come and get them. It's just as simple as that. And, you know, Trump is evil, and now he's mixing it up with Putin and Iran and the Chinese and everything. And in the end, they all just wipe each other out. But we don't need to worry about that. We can keep an eye on it so we know where it's going. Yet we all have to evolve now. And to understand that the world's perfect, you can't change the world. Elon Musk has his karma. Donald Trump has his karma. The leader of Iran has his karma. All the peoples underneath them have their karma. Yeah? You saw the karma of the people in Hurricane Helene, that hit the east coast of America, right? This was a sign. They had the west coast and the east coast hit both almost at the same time. Yeah. So God is not happy with the American people. Yet, I watched a video of what's going on in West Carolina and Florida area, of how the people lost everything. They lost it all. And they had to start again. And you know, they were all shafted by the insurance industry, which I think is one of the most corrupt criminal enterprises. Yeah, you shouldn't have. There's no point having insurance because they don't pay out when you need it. And all these people who had houses destroyed in the floods, their insurance didn't cover them. So they lost their houses. Their houses were worth 200,000 or 300,000. They only got paid out 45,000, 50,000, something like that. That was the maximum amount that they paid. Not by the insurance companies. They paid nothing. It's this federal agency that helps destitute people. Okay. So they have a limited amount of money to build back. But you know, they're all happy because they didn't lose their land. They didn't lose their land. And, you know, maybe they thought, maybe I don't need such a big place. You know, maybe I'll build a smaller place. It's caused everybody to rethink, and they're coming back as a neighborhood. They're all helping each other. The community is being rebuilt. Before the flood, they were all living in their separate houses, you know, with the internet. Now they lost the internet. They lost everything, lost electricity, lost everything. All they had was themselves and each other. And the will of God moves through the people, and people were sent there to help them. And everybody's coming back. And they're coming back better than they ever were. And so when a nation is destroyed, it's built back better. Look at Germany in World War II. Germany was completely and utterly destroyed, every bit of it, all its industrial capacity, everything. And a few years later, it's built back better than ever. So what I'm trying to say, I suppose, is that natural disasters like wars and stuff like that, because you can't avoid them, yeah, you can't avoid them. You have a certain level of evil in the world. The only thing that can happen is a war, yeah. That's all that can happen. To take it out, one evil destroys a greater evil, or a lesser evil. I'm not 100% sure how that works. Sometimes it's hard to tell which is the lesser and which is the greater evil. Although with the Russia-Ukraine, it's pretty easy to tell. And with US-Iran, well, I think it's pretty easy to tell there too, you know, like which is a greater evil. Our American Israel. It's a long video. I could carry on, but I'm not going to. I'm going to close it off at that. And perhaps I'll make another video of some kind of summary of this summary, because it's more involved, this video, than I'd like it to be. There's hope for the world, because if you're a good, virtuous person, you end up with nothing but good fortune. Now, we may not find ourselves living in the Garden of Eden because it doesn't exist anymore. That's only because of that level of evil in the world. And once that evil is destroyed, things could be rebuilt better, like there were in the West Carolinas. And perhaps our sense of community will come back at that point, and we can build a better world, having learnt our lessons about not, you know, we learned then not to treat the animals so badly. Now we have to learn not to treat the poor people so badly, yeah? And to share what we've got. If the poor people don't have the wherewithal to the land to live on, if they don't have the materials to build their houses, the rich need to give it to them, because it's their share of the world. They have every right, like the animals had every right, to occupy a small piece of green area and look after it as best as it can be looked after. And I think if they stop building Groks and start building great communities again, then that might make America great again. And all they're doing is making America very small and very pitiable in the eyes of the world in what's going on with this nonsense. Yet, they're all playing their part. They can't help themselves. They're in their position and they've got to do what they've got to do. And it won't be over until it's over. Just don't get involved in it. That's all I can say. You don't need to get involved in it. If you have to get involved in it, you will become involved in it, if you're not good enough to stay out of it. If you're wise, God will lead you to one side and will preserve what you know, so that the new communities of light, which will be evolving out of all this dark war, will have the best chance they've got of a new start, just like they have in Florida and North Carolina, or West Carolina, or wherever it was. I'm not a geographer when it comes to the US. I'm going to carry on reading my book, and maybe there's another video to come from this, I'm not sure. But it's been a very interesting journey, and I hope you enjoy the video. And if you've got this far, well, maybe you've understood the importance of some of this stuff, and it's time to squirrel it away. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel, because I had somebody tell me they couldn't get any of my stuff Maybe they tried searching for it, couldn't get it. So if you subscribe to it and actually go to the channel and look at the channel there, you'll see the playlists and all that stuff. And so I'll just put on the tail end of this video, I'll put the first video I took by accident of the squirrel, just to remind you to squirrel it away. Thanks for watching.